Hey, Club Scouts, it's Michael McMillan here, and I want to start the show with a couple Patreon shout-outs for the week. I want to thank Adam Underwood and Amanda Newman for joining our Patreon campaign. You can check that out at www.patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub. And this Friday, May 18th, will be the second installment of our Bigfoot Movie Club. We're going to be watching The Legend of Boggy Creek with special guest Pete Gardner, your favorite guy from the very first episode. So join us on Friday. Check out our Patreon campaign. Thank you so much. And it's time for the show.
It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce and Michael. I know a ghost story or two. Let's do this.
Speaking of Pete Gardner.
Yeah.
Ooh, we're going to have
see him
another movie
tonight.
night. Yeah. It's going to be good. But that's another show, guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Guys,
that's special.
This is Bigfoot Collectors Club. This is the main show right now. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With you always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
and your producer,
Riley Bray.
And if you don't know, this is a show where we share stories of high strangeness with celebrity guests and get to know their personal paranormal history.
Yep.
This is part 2 of our Totally Lame two-parter. Last week we had Elizabeth Lame, who is co-host of the Totally Lame podcast. And this week we have her co-host, and he's of Totally Lame, and the on massive hiatus, Totally Beverages and Sometimes Hot Sauce, which is a great show.
Ooh.
And he's a music producer. He's an amazing guy. He is inspiration for me in the podcasting world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Andy Rosen.
Yeah.
What's up?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Dr.
hell yeah.
Rosen.
I'm very excited to be here.
Dude, so Liz was saying last week that she came in and she was like, I have some stories, but then Andy told the stories, and I realized they were all Andy's stories.
I know she was going to jack your stories.
I had mentioned that to her too, because I was like, "You're going like, don't take all my stories," which she likes to do.
This is like, because you guys are married.
Yes.
If we haven't established that already.
Yeah.
Now, does your marriage predate your podcast partnership? Did you meet in a podcast and fall in love? I know the answer to
Yeah,
this
that's
question.
how it always happens.
That's what's happening with me and Riley.
oh, that's
Hey,
a beautiful
wait a
podcast.
Good news,
thing.
everybody.
We're
Good
both in
news.
relationships, but slowly we're discovering our love for one
It
another.
happens on a podcast all the time, right? It's
Yeah.
like those on-set relationships, right?
Yeah, it's like, I wonder if there's been any celebrity podcast hookups.
We could certainly inquire about it.
Yeah, like the tapes just stop rolling
Yeah.
and like, oh, that's
And
interesting.
then if people get it on.
Could that happen though? Like you're an actor, you've been on set a lot, and I imagine you've maybe danced in one of those type of relationships. Could it happen so quick on a podcast? Because a podcast, we're talking about a one-off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You know, but then again, I guess you and Riley, that makes more sense because you guys are here every
It would
episode
have to
together.
be long
Yeah,
term.
you know,
It
it's
could just be a
building.
guest appearance.
It's a
Yeah.
slow simmer.
Because showmances tend to be a slow burn.
Okay, that was my
It's like
question.
you're hanging out on set for a while, then maybe the cast goes and grabs some drinks, and then maybe you two are the last two hanging out. And then you're like, hey, let's go get another drink. And then
Sounds
next
very
thing you
specific.
know, next thing you know,
You're
guys
having
are
a three-way in Vegas.
Yeah, exactly.
Hypothetically, of course.
Oh man, I miss those days of three ways in
Yeah, I know.
Vegas. So Andy, how's your week been? What's up? If anything weird happening in your life right now? You're in a new house.
I'm in a new house. No weirdness in the new house.
No vibes.
No vibes.
Because you, in your old place, you're in Elizabeth's old place, you guys had some vibes going on.
Yeah, in vibes, kind of early on in our tenure at that house.
Okay.
And then I think we took care of some of those vibes.
All right, do you want to let's
how'd
dive
you- how'd you do
talk
that?
about this.
We can
let's,
dig
let's
in.
talk about Andy's personal paranormal history. here.
Yes.
'Cause I feel like you came loaded today.
Yeah, I have. Okay, so
By
we moved
loaded,
into.
I mean we can smell your breath. from here.
I'm sorry.
We've been meaning to say something.
My wife also asked me today. I was out in the studio working. I came inside, and she's like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Have you been crying?" And I was like, "No." And the only reason I'm saying that is just to make sure you guys don't think I've been crying.
Oh, what?
I like sensitive guys.
Triggered. Yeah. First of all, I think I've cried on this podcast before. I know we've had some guests, so you're welcome to do it.
Okay.
But what signaled?
She said it looks like I've been crying.
Really?
Yeah, and that's so I'm a little worried that you guys might think I've been crying.
No.
Not that that's a bad thing.
I mean, that's like something you can run with. Be like, I was just, it's been a rough day, and
You should have been like, I was just making some music
That is
and
so
thinking about
sweet.
how much I love you,
Yeah,
and
right.
your kids.
God, there you go.
And I got overwhelmed. She'd be like, "Oh, Andy." That's so. I feel like sometimes, and in the relationship I'm in right now, I don't feel like there's like no pressure to be emotionally vulnerable in that relationship. In fact, I think my girlfriend is like, okay, you don't have to tell me all of this stuff.
oh wow,
Oh.
I mean, she's great. She's awesome. But I feel like I've had girlfriends in the past that like would get so excited if I cried in a movie, or should they be like, oh my God, look at you crying.
I got one.
Yeah. So
I feel like my wife's in that category.
I kinda-
Gets excited
Yeah.
if she sees any waterworks brewing,
Yes, yeah,
any
the-
turmoil, anything like, oh, I want to see this. Like, and I don't know if it's like so I can tell my friends later about how much of like little pussy you are, or I don't know what it is, but yeah, she loves it.
yeah, because it sounded like she was almost hopeful. Like, were you crying in there?
Yeah.
I just love like you being in your studio, just silently weeping. What it would be about.
I know that's weird. Like she thinks that could even happen.
I think you're.
I mean, I guess it could happen, right? We've all cried
oh
alone.
my God.
It's a good
could've-
time to cry.
You're married. I mean, Bryce. So maybe that I don't know, but maybe you should have asked her if she's been crying. Maybe it was really about her feelings.
Right. Yeah. That's a
When
good
you go
point.
home tonight, you should be like, "Hey, babe, were you crying? Were you asking me because you'd been crying?" I don't know.
It's like that white man can't jump thing with the glass of water. When I ask you if you want a glass of water, I want you to empathize with me because I may also want a glass of water.
Was that Rosie Perez?
Yeah, that was my Rosie
That was a
Perez.
pretty good Rosie Perez impersonation.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh! All right, so let's get into your house.
All right, so we moved from New York to LA about 10 years ago into a house in Silver Lake. And just a nice little 1.5 bedroom place in Silver Lake. Kind of old. I'm going to guess 20s or 30s, maybe.
Yeah, it's
And
got that bungalow feel.
Yeah, so I guess it's a bungalow. So to paint the picture right, let's call my house House A.
Right.
To the right of that is House B.
Yes.
And then to the right of House B is C.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
They're all
C
kind of
for-
relevant
C
in the
for
story.
Creepy.
No.
Okay.
So we're living in House A. Our landlord lives in House B. Okay. And then House C is some neighbors, which will be relevant.
Creepy neighbors.
No,
creepy.
No,
Oh, damn
no,
it.
no. So my initial, what did you call it? Highly strange?
High strangeness.
High strangeness.
Yeah.
Happened, we'd been there less than a year. I don't remember if it was a month, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I was sleeping and I woke up and I looked to the right. I guess I saw my wife who sleeps to the right of me. And then past her in the bedroom, I see a lady sitting in a chair, an older woman sitting in a chair. And it was instantly one of the most like scared I've ever been in my life.
Did you scream out?
No. So you have to understand, and maybe Elizabeth talked about this. Elizabeth,
She didn't talk about this stuff at all.
so her history though with just like being scared is huge. So I'm
Okay.
very sensitive not to scare her, if that
boy.
makes sense.
We did not do a good job of being that sensitive last week.
And so my first response was I see this lady and I'm like, holy shit, there's a lady sitting in a chair right there. Close my eyes. This can't be real. Open my eyes. Lady's still there. And felt menacing. Like, I don't know if evil is the right word, but like menacing and like, this is not a good lady.
Right.
Okay.
She's not baking cookies.
And my thought was like to protect my
Like,
wife and not
Tom
wake Elizabeth
Jones
up.
would not sing a song about her. This is not his kind of lady.
No,
Okay.
exactly. So I'm just laying there and I keep trying to do like a double take and like lady is still there.
By the way, perfect time to practice a double take.
Yeah.
When you're seeing a ghost.
But in my mind, I mean, it's important to the story. I don't want to scare Elizabeth. I don't want to tell her. So much so. So finally, the incident kind of relieves itself, I guess you could say. Lady's gone. Okay.
Did you see her fade?
No, I did not see her fade. It was more like closing my eyes, rolling around, looking the other way, and then coming back, and then finally she's gone.
Oh, so you were just trying to sit in it.
Yes. And so in the morning, though, I wake up and I remember it like, holy shit. And also, I'm like, there's no way I'm telling Elizabeth because we're in this new house. Like, I had the thought, I'm not telling Elizabeth about this. Did not feel like a dream at all, in case any of you guys are wondering that.
No, we don't ever wonder that. We go straight to believing the guest. So don't worry.
We're a pretty easy bunch over here. Yeah. So, ghost, for sure. Ghost in the chair. Yeah, no doubt about it. Confirmed.
100%.
So about a week or 2 weeks later, I have another experience in the house. This time I'm sleeping and I wake up and I see a guy hovering above me.
Oh, God.
Now, there's a big difference this time, though. I do not feel any menace. Right off the bat, I wake up and it's like, but it's like, okay, this guy's not here to hurt me at all. There's no terror,
Can you describe clothing?
Absolutely. This is very important. So, clothing-wise, I would describe it, and I don't know...
He's wearing a 1988 Bulls jersey.
No, it's some sort of military
garb or something.
Garb. And I'm going to say
modern.
No, not modern. Ooh. Like, that's the problem. I don't know my military garb that well.
Like, would you put it around the Civil War era?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Maybe Civil War or maybe even like earlier than that, maybe. But Civil War, I think, is a good reference point.
Okay.
So that sticks with me. And
white dude?
Yeah, white dude. I would say he's probably in his 40s.
Okay.
Maybe 30s.
Okay.
He's hovering over me, do a couple double takes, he's still there, and then incident's gone. He just disappears. He's not there any longer.
Okay.
I do not tell my wife.
Right.
Yet.
Oh my God.
Wow,
How do you...
I can't stop thinking about both of these incidents.
Are you telling anyone?
I've not told anybody.
Oh my God. I'd be freaking out.
So I finally tell Elizabeth. I don't remember how much time had lapsed. It might have been like the day after the guy thing because I was freaking out.
A floating dude.
Like we're in a haunted house. And I remember we were sitting on the couch and I said, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And her mind, I mean, as she tells it, went to all these crazy places. Am I cheating on her? Yeah. Like all the stuff.
It's just like, you're about to tell her you have brain cancer.
Like, right, exactly. And I was like, I had like, I think kind of like a weird ghost experience in which she said like all the hairs on her, neck stand up after I'd prefaced it with like, I need to talk to you about something. Right. So I give her the quick rundown of everything. She's totally freaked out.
There's a woman in her room and a guy floats over my bed.
Yeah. And so paranoia in our house is kind of high. So I'll leave it there just for a second. I'll try to get through the rest of us as quick as possible. So neighbor B is landlord to the right. Neighbor C is a great couple whose landlord happens to be a ghost hunter.
Nice.
Convenient.
And so this is something that my wife had found out just chatting with the guy. He's very forthcoming about it, but he's not around. He's the landlord of place C, okay?
Yeah.
So he's never really around, but my wife bumped into him once because they were doing work on the house.
Okay.
And she's like, that guy's a ghost hunter. And I was like, no shit, that's fucking crazy. We got the ghosts. But she didn't talk to him about the ghosts. So long story short,
seems like
a little time passes and I bump into the guy.
Opportunity there. Okay, bump in.
I bump into the guy.
Yeah, okay.
So house A, my experiences. House B, my landlord. House C, ghost hunter.
Ghost hunter.
Right? So I run into him. We start chatting. Hey, nice work that you're doing on the house, whatever. Hey, are you a ghost hunter? Like my wife said, you're a ghost hunter.
I keep imagining him like coming back from work, like taking off his ghost equipment, like, long day on the field.
He's just got a ghost vacuum cleaner on his back.
So he's like, yeah. And I was like, man, that's so crazy. Before I say anything, he's like, lot of activity on this block.
Oh, wow.
And he goes, the old lady that lives in the old man's house and points at my house. And I'm like, oh, shit. I have said nothing except, are you ghost
about
hunter?
the woman?
And he's like in the old man's house, and he was referring to my landlord, who I found out used to live in our house.
Okay.
So house B, he used to live in house A.
Got it.
Right? And I'm like, oh, shit. And I was like, well, what about the old lady? And he's like, well, I see her a lot in the garden. And she's old and she's unhappy. And I was like, hey, I had an experience. And so I go into the whole story that I told you.
Yeah.
And he, without batting an eye, is like, oh, yeah, that tracks, and that's her son.
Whoa.
So that's the son,
So
and
was
this
she
is this
in
old
old-timey
lady.
clothing too?
I didn't have any
Yeah.
feel for that.
I mean, on some level, it's nice to get confirmation that you're not like, losing your mind or something.
Exactly. And it just seems so crazy that the ghost hunter next door, you can confirm it. It felt very validating.
Yeah,
Of
totally.
course.
So
I mean, that is a leap. If someone is like faking that shit, how they faked, you know what I mean?
yes.
Like, that just confirms everything for us in this room, I think.
So my questions to him were the military garb. That was like my first question. And I was like, so it's the son. And I was like, when I saw him, he was wearing this military uniform, and it seemed like very old. And I was like, was he in the military? And he's like, well, no, not necessarily, but often ghosts wear like what they wanted to be.
Wait, what?
Wow.
This is what this guy tells me.
Okay.
It gets even weirder and better.
I just got a vision of what my ghost will be. In like some fishnet shirt with rock and roll pants and an electric guitar. There's a guitar god haunting our house.
They're gonna the people living in my apartment 20 years from now, because I'm expecting not to live much longer, I guess.
Yeah, right.
They'd be like, some old weirdo in a Jedi costume is walking around.
That's amazing.
So he's like, so he might not have been a military guy. He might have just like wanted to be. He's like, so ghosts can dress however they want,
Well, I would assume.
That's a first I've heard. I love that.
Wow.
but their essence is always who they were.
Okay.
For example, and I swear this was the example he used, if he was a child molester in real life, he'd be a child molester ghost. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. Why is that your go-to example?
You
about
need to change
the
your go-to.
essence
For
of a guy?
example, just off the top of my head.
Like, it was the weirdest,
That is super
weirdest
weird.
example. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of drove home the point.
Right.
Dress however you want, but your essence.
Also,
Right.
what kind of ghost has this guy been hanging around?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talk a little bit more. I like get his card. I'm thinking about like maybe I'll go. He does all these ghost hunting activities, but I never really follow through on it.
Was
But-
it because of the child molester comment?
Yeah, it was weird.
A little bit.
It was very
Yeah,
weird.
A little bit.
So a little more time goes by, and we have some friends over for dinner one night. And I haven't seen any ghosts yet. Elizabeth kind of thinks like some creepy stuff has happened. Like, I swear I felt someone walking behind me.
Right.
But nothing really happens. And we have some friends over for dinner one night. They leave. We later find out they know nothing about our ghost experiences. We later find out that our friend Becky, as she gets in the car with her husband to drive home, and is like, hey, Brian, I saw a ghost in their house. And like saw a ghost walk down the stairs inside our house. Freaked her out so much that she didn't tell us in the moment. She told her husband when she got in the car with him.
Totally.
And was like, do we tell them? Or is that like
wow.
gonna freak them the fuck out? And then so we found out later.
Did she see the old
much
lady
later,
or the son?
she saw a lady.
Whoa. Dude, that's hardcore.
Yeah,
That is
so
some
it
hardcore shit.
feels validated. So like I'm pretty open to all of this stuff. I feel like I'm in a very safe space with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like those confirmations, the Sea House landlord dude,
Yeah.
and then our friends, I'm just like, what the fuck? And so after all of that, I did go through, and you guys might even be able to tell me like what are the best actions you can take. But like we did some of the like asking them very nicely, like,
Yeah.
hey, we'd appreciate it if you leave us the fuck alone.
Yeah,
please.
well, and it's interesting too because the thing that rings a bell for me is that you were how long in the apartment or the house before you had seen both of them?
Like not very long. I can't
Yeah.
remember, but maybe like within the first 6 months that we lived
Yeah, I
there.
was going to say, so it sounds like they were checking you guys out because you were new tenants. And then I think probably once they got used to you guys being around, you didn't see them as much, right? I mean, you didn't.
Well, I don't know. One thing that I remember the ghost hunter telling me too is sometimes they don't know that they're ghosts.
Right. We've touched upon this on the show a little bit.
And then I feel like
I think we talked about it with Elizabeth last week.
Is there
actually.
another example of this too? Like, are there different theories of what ghosts are, or like?
Yeah,
I don't
of course.
know.
Well, we've talked about some of the theories are ghosts are actually the souls of the dead that are either stuck here on this plane for whatever reason. A lot of times, you know, when they say that we die and we see the light at the end of the tunnel, there's poltergeist, go towards the light, all that stuff. That there are ghosts. Some ghosts are the souls of people that are scared of going on the other side of that light and being judged.
They miss
being
the
sent
jump.
to the wrong place if they come from a Christian upbringing.
Okay.
Especially a lot of these old timey ghosts that are growing up in hardcore Christian Judeo-Christian structures. They think that some ghosts are like they were scared to be judged by God, so they stay here. Then there are other ghosts that are still the souls of the dead, but they will come back from the other side and visit their like old stomping grounds. They'd be like, "Oh, I love that house or I love that garden, so I'm going to go visit them, and then I'm going to go back to the other side." A lot of people think that ghosts are like a biological imprint, something that revolves around a traumatic event. So like a murder that maybe resonates throughout the time stream. And then every now and then it'll replay itself.
Like it's an energy,
Like
Yeah,
it's
like
an
a wave.
energy imprint or like a wave or something that was sort of recorded forever that you'll see every now and then.
That's
so
crazy.
it's not a soul, it's just sort of an echo of a person that was there or a traumatic event.
But that doesn't explain a lot of like interactions with ghosts.
No, I
you
mean,
know?
but the visitation ones would, or the ones that are
Yeah.
residual or a residential ghost. A residential ghost or resident ghost is one that is there all the time. Which it sounds to me like you either have one or had one that was a resident ghost or a visitor, one that would come back and visit the house.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It sounds like if this woman was unhappy, she might have just been there all the time,
Right.
hanging around.
right?
You know, but
like an unfulfilled purpose type thing or something, right? Or
Yeah.
like a hanging on to life.
well, and you think about people who get stuck in ruts in their life all the time, who are just like, man, they can't get out of this rut. I mean, it's possible that after you die, you're just like, you still, even in death, can't get out of that funk or that rut that you've been in your entire life.
Jesus.
Because he said she was unhappy. That
Yeah.
makes me think that she didn't move on for some reason. And maybe the son is tied to that as well. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
that is so weird. It's so weird that he's wearing like a military uniform. Because the thing that strikes me is that the house can't, like you said, is 20s, 30s probably.
Right.
So why would there be, unless he's the ghost of like some cavalry guy or some dude from the Union Army that was out helping establish the West and was out here in the late 1800s, would maybe, you know, post-world or post-Civil War might make sense. But otherwise, why would a dude be
Maybe it's like a
hanging around?
cosplay situation.
Well,
he was
I
on
mean,
like
I
the
was gonna say,
forefront of cosplay.
Your greatest benefit to this show is letting us know that ghosts can wear the clothes they'd like, but it doesn't change their essence. I almost thought of like a ghost changing room, like going through, no, oh, this is nice.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Oh,
This
man.
is more me.
This is more me. I'd like to wear this.
That's crazy, though.
That's a great story, though. I mean, that's a good ghost story, man.
I remember the first time that I met you guys, I came over and did an episode, or this is when Totally Lame was doing the first round of the series, and I basically held these two hostage in their own home and made them watch UFO videos.
That's right. Yeah.
Because I think I'd heard you guys talk on the show about being into UFOs as well.
Yeah.
Now, where do you stand on UFOs, flying saucers, aliens, all that stuff?
Love it. Have not had a personal experience,
Okay.
but I'm like so down. And just to me, it seems like there's no world in which they can't exist.
Right.
Sort of.
Do you know anyone in your family, or did you grow up hearing any kind of UFO encounter stories?
I went to in college. One of my roommates, Libby, her uncle allegedly worked at Area 51.
Wow.
And would tell them growing up, like, someday I'll tell you the shit. And I can remember her telling it to me in a way where it was like, for real.
Whoa.
But that's my only little.
That sounds like a good
tie to it.
deathbed confession.
Yeah.
Because that's when a lot of these old timers will like start spilling the beans.
Well,
is
absolutely.
When
Well, if you
they're
think
dying and they tell their family like, Roswell really happened.
And there's a lot of those cases out there, because if you think of the personnel it takes to maintain a military base in the middle of a desert, it's vast. I mean, so there's a lot of people working in those units that have families, and I know they fly them in and out of McCarran Airport, out of like I think it's in Reno or something like that, to fly them in there. So they come from all over, and they have families all over. And
Dave Keith and I, a buddy of mine who's been on the show, he lives back in Kansas City. We did a road trip through Area 51.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
Like a few years ago. We saw it's a desolate area. There's nothing out there.
Yeah.
Also on that road trip, you can hit Tonopah, Utah or Nevada, which has the Haunted Clown Hotel, which you should definitely go check out.
Never heard of that one.
It's this clown motel that is decorated with clowns on the outside and the inside, like clown dolls and clown paintings and clown statues. And there is next door to it, like right next to the parking lot, there is because Tonopah was a silver mining town during the gold rush and everything. And there is a old ass cemetery where the headstones are wooden headstones, and it's all these people who died in a silver mine explosion. And then just people who, and it's right, literally you could walk outside and it's a stone's throw away from the clown motel. So that's got to be like one of the most haunted fucking places.
That just sounds no bueno.
But being out in Area 51 is really crazy. Like we literally were driving through, we were past that point, and you can't get super close, but we went to the little alien. You can stop in there. But we were driving along, and a fucking huge stealth bomber plane came coming over the mountain range right over our car. So there's like they're like, okay, there you go. That was like got our money's worth. They're definitely still flying aircraft out there, and probably some stuff that we haven't.
It's
seen
a very
yet.
operational base. Absolutely. Now they say the next big secret base is all the conspiracy theorists point to Dulce, New Mexico.
That's supposed to be where the underground. Have you heard of Dulce?
No.
It's where supposedly there are like multiple underground levels at this military base where they are doing some weird genetic experiments on creating weird animal hybrids. There's supposedly aliens being housed down there.
There was a supposed alien war that took place there too.
Is that where the janitor got his hand melted?
Yeah, Phil Schneider is his name. And
tell Andy this story. If you can think of it. We'll cover this eventually.
We have to cover this story.
And this deserves a high story.
Because, but it's also one of those stories that also raise a lot of like, oh no, you're going down the dark rabbit hole too on this one, because
Dulce's tough, because if you get into this, the stories and the mythology around Dulce, it's fucking dark.
Yeah, well, because the Phil Schneider guy checks out, like his father was pretty high military, and apparently this guy, went on TV, and I think it was at a UFO convention or something like that, and basically explained how he was involved in an alien firefight underground in the base, and the guy has the scars to prove it,
And an alien supposedly shot his hand with a laser, and his hand's like kind of melted.
Yeah,
and scarred.
I mean, what's unfortunate
There's
is
weird shit out there, dude.
Is he ended up mysteriously
That's why we're doing the show.
mysteriously dying like a few years later. And so,
did he legit work there? Was that did he have were they able to prove that he actually worked at this base?
I mean, nobody's able to prove that they.
No,
I mean, he had really good information of architectural schematics of the place, and I mean, he described it, from top to bottom of how many levels there were,
It's
what
one
went
of
on
those
each
where
level.
It's like either the guy is a really good liar and a really entertaining storyteller,
Yeah.
or it actually happened.
Well, and there's been a few what do you call those informants who don't go on record, who have corroborated his story too? Some like high level
people to
say everything. Yeah, everything he's saying is true. So I mean, that's because listen, Dreamland or Area 51, they only officially recognized it in the 80s, and before that, everybody was just like, "No, it doesn't exist. No, it doesn't exist."
Oh shit!
And so now we're at that same position with Dulce. It's like the government doesn't officially recognize it because, of course, they're not going to. But yeah, obviously, the government holds a secret base somewhere, and it's not Dreamland anymore. And so for the last 30, 50 years, it's been Dulce.
What's Dreamland? Is that
what's another name?
Area 51?
Yeah, it's another name for. I think more specific the hangars that they used to house the crashed spacecrafts. That was kind of their name for it was Dreamland.
Got it. So Andy, do aliens scare you?
No. So, do you remember the big? What was the? What's the Tesla rocket company?
Oh yeah, the Falcon X
the big Falcon thing that happened in LA recently.
Yeah.
So when that happened, Elizabeth ran into the house and was like, "You got to come out here, come check out this thing that's in the sky." And I go outside. My thought is like, "This is awesome." I do not go to doomsday scenario or any fear at all for some reason. Where I know a lot of people are like, "Oh fuck, we're screwed." But yeah, I'm not scared of the aliens. I'm excited by them.
If you woke up and like that old lady, there were 3 to 4 gray 4-foot-tall beings with black eyes standing around your bed.
Terrified.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
If you started floating out of your window in a beam of light. Terrifying. Fire in the sky style.
Terrifying.
Okay, cool.
You're not alone though, being on that side that's open to the idea or somewhat optimistic about it. I forget the name of the study, but they ran a few big studies, kind of going around saying, well, would you fear an alien or UFO presence, or and they found a majority, almost 70 to 80%, were kind of optimistic about it, like you were, hey, obviously we feel like we're not alone in this universe. I mean, our mathematicians and our scientists are telling us that, and it's a mathematical certainty. So people are more open to the idea, and once that gets let in, then they kind of feel like, well, if nothing's happened yet, then they can feel a little bit optimistic about it,
Yeah.
But who knows? They say that's sort of like the breadcrumb theory, that we're just being a little bit kind of, here's a little bit of information, here's a little bit of information, and then openly and throughout a long enough period of time, we all become acquiesced to the whole idea of, oh well, yeah, there's aliens here. I'm just convinced of it,
And before they reveal the truth.
Yeah, sort of.
Got it.
Or who knows?
So ghosts check, aliens check. Where do you stand on Bigfoot? Do you think it's possible that there is a species of primate that's living somewhere in North America in the wilderness that has not been officially discovered yet?
Yeah, I guess.
You're giving it to me.
No, I'm just the Bigfoot one. It just seems. I don't know why it wouldn't have been confirmed by now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
it seems, I guess, plausible, yeah.
What if Bigfoot turns out to be a more supernatural creature that can jump in and out of our dimension?
Well, that's crazy. I mean, school me on Bigfoot. I mean, I don't know that much about Bigfoot.
Right. What's your connection to Bigfoot? Did you ever read stories about Bigfoot as a kid?
No,
you lived in Montana, right? Surely you must have heard some stuff about Bigfoot when you were in Montana.
No, never any personal experiences. I just remember growing up and hearing some stories and maybe some movies and whatnot. But no, I don't have any real connection to Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I have a vision of him in my mind
right
now.
Let's hear about it. Yeah, what is it?
Well, yeah, he's very large. Looks in between a monkey and man.
Okay.
Yeah, you're close.
I don't know if monkey's the right word.
Yeah,
but
ape, maybe?
Ape, yeah. Ape and man.
Is he a gentle soul? Or is he?
Yeah, that's a great question because I don't know if I've heard of any menacing stories. Is he a menacing character?
Sometimes he throws rocks at people to scare them off. Yeah.
There's a few different fields, I guess. There's like those. There's like I know there's a really popular. I think it's called Sasquatch Chronicles, where they don't allow anybody who's like, no, Sasquatch is friendly. They're like, no, we're not having it. Red eyes, evil Sasquatch. That's how it's got to play.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
that they are definitely
a malevolent creature.
So they're believers in Sasquatch,
Sure.
which is the exact same thing as Bigfoot.
Yeah.
They're synonymous?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah,
Actually, I think Bigfoot was originally, I wish David Keith were here, but Bigfoot, I think, originally started off as a folklore character that was more human in appearance. And then eventually the term Bigfoot got merged with and became synonymous
I
with
think that
Sasquatch.
the papers coined the term Bigfoot after the what was called the Jerry Crew tracks, which took place in Northern California. And I think Sasquatch, the name Sasquatch, comes from an indigenous tribe and their naming of that sort of entity. And
like a hairy wild man of the woods.
And worldwide around, most indigenous tribes, they tell of that mythos, of that tale of a large hairy creature. And theirs is malevolent too. A lot of the indigenous tribes is, they'll take your children and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that, which and I also have the camps where a couple people I know that are like, or a lot of those accounts that you can read as well, but Bigfoots are very friendly. Like they'll interplay with different families and
more of a Harry and the Hendersons.
Absolutely. So there's definitely two camps.
Remember when John Lithgow punched Harry in the face? That part of the movie, I was so mad. He was trying to get him to go back to the woods, but that was
my
cool.
friend believes that, and I should have him on the show. He's a wonderful guy. He did a film about Bigfoot called Letters from the Big Man.
Why are you just bringing this up now?
His name is Chris Munch, and he's a wonderful director. And he's but his kind of point of view is that if you go out searching to capture this thing, Bigfoot's going to know about it either psychically or through your smell or through your presence. They have the upper hand looking. But if you're out there to communicate on some sort of a spiritual plane, if you're not going out there with guns and out there with like looking to get pictures, and that you have a much higher chance to interact with this creature.
I always thought it would be cool if Bigfoot had the ability to blur himself in photos, and that's why there's only blurry photos of him.
Right? Yeah.
There was a Superman comic about 10 years ago where Superman would if he knew that because he's Superman, he knows what's going on. But if someone was taking a picture of him, he'd blur his face he'd move his face really quick. So when the negative came out, his face would be blurred, so you couldn't identify him as easily in the press. I think Bigfoot, that'd be awesome if Bigfoot had that ability.
I mean, who knows what ability Bigfoot has? So
do you guys think he is more evolved than us? Or you know what I mean? Is he supernatural?
I'll tell you where I lie on it. I do not feel that this is some missing link that's just who we haven't discovered yet, who lives his entire life in the woods and feeds off the creatures of the woods to survive and has kids and those. I otherwise I just believe that we would have captured one or had better evidence of one. I think these things move in and out of dimensions. And listen, it's very much like the UFO lore, because UFOs also leave physical trace evidence. I mean, burnings in fields, scars, marks, and stuff like that. But they also disappear.
Sometimes imprints from landing gear. Show up.
Those are the most common. Yeah, but they also seem to just disappear, like you're turning off a light, right out of existence. Yeah. So.
A lot of the stuff that we get into, and as the show progresses, we start to. I think Bryce has always been in this camp. I'm opening up to it more and more that a lot of these things seem to take on is a very almost a psychic phenomenon as well, or something that some of the stuff is either it seems to take, and I'm repeating myself, I said this on the show, but it seems that some of these encounters require the user, you, and the other thing that you're experiencing to create what that other thing appears as.
That's interesting.
Because there's
an interplay
much
between
weirdness in this stuff, and we'll take a break and we'll come back in just a moment and do our story of high strangeness. But you'll see in today's story, there's something about this where there's something weird going on. I think it's not just, I don't think these things are just aliens from other planets or apes that we can't find in the woods. Now, I think those are possibilities, but there seems to be some weirder phenomenon happening with all of this stuff that science has not been yet able to explain.
Yeah, there's universal themes in
Yes.
like I guess with like you guys know a lot about this with aliens. There's story after story of similar
Yes.
experiences or similar looking creatures,
going
right?
all the way back to like Celtic folklore and fairy folklore, where if you get into some of the fairy stories, fairy tales, not the like Grimm's fairy tales, but like stuff about like what people believe the little people were.
Yeah.
They're very similar to the way that we talk about aliens.
Okay.
So anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's time for High Strangeness.
Cool.
Hey everyone, this is Riley. I wanted to let you know we've launched our Patreon page. It's a place where listeners can help support the show and gain access to exclusive bonus content. For $5 a month, our Patreon members get special episodes like our campfire stories, movie club, and Out There episodes, where we explore our own little place in the cosmos. We also post behind-the-scenes conversations that happen during the breaks and all sorts of other bonuses. We put a lot of love into these episodes, and we make a lot of them. They're a deeper level of the show where we expand on ideas and concepts from our main feed. Our weekly show will of course always remain free, but for $5 a month, our Patreon members will gain full access to the inner sanctum of the BCC. We hope you'll join us there. That's patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub. And thanks for listening.
And we're back, Bigfoot Collectors Club, and it's time for High Strangeness with our guest, Andy Rosen. Deep in Northern California lies an expanse of wilderness in Placer County called Cisco Grove. Located in Tahoe National Forest, this mountainous landscape frequented by campers and hikers would be the perfect setting for a Sasquatch encounter. In fact, if you go to YouTube right now and search Cisco Grove, California Sasquatch, you'll find a video from 2017 featuring remote-control car enthusiasts allegedly capturing a glimpse of the forest creature on camera in the background.
Ooh.
Go check it out.
I don't believe I've ever seen that one.
It's questionable. However, the encounter that Donald Shroom experienced in 1964 would be far more bizarre than a Bigfoot sighting. Far more out of this world. Like, really, really out there.
Cool.
This is the insane story of the Cisco Grove UFO encounter. Have you heard about this one, Bryce?
I have.
This one is awesome. I heard this maybe on Coast to Coast about 8 or 9 years ago. And it's a story, well, as you'll see, that hadn't really gotten out into the public until around 2010, 2012. So it's a really, really cool one. Very bizarre.
I'm excited that his name is Donald Shroom.
Yeah.
That's a really painted picture in my head already.
SHRUM.
Okay.
Now,
Close enough.
it wasn't quite yet rifle season on September 4th, 1964, but that didn't stop 28-year-old Donald Shroom, an employee of Aerojet, the nation's leading missile contractor for the U.S. government, and his two colleagues, Vincent Alvarez and Tim Trueblood, from going on a deer hunt, armed only with bows and arrows.
Oh, okay.
So this is how...
I thought they were like, who needs laws?
Fuck it. I mean, these guys probably would be, but yeah, they were carrying these giant, like 60-pound bows
Bow
that
hunters.
at point blank range would be as strong as a rifle shot, and that's important later. But I didn't mention this, but this Cisco Grove, California, this is up near like Sacramento. This is kind of in the northern California. It's near the Nevada border, California border. Now, these three men were experienced hunters and woodsmen, and after they set up camp and went out to hunt, they made a pact that if they were to get separated, they would meet back at the campsite. If it got dark and one of them was still separated from the group, that person was to stay put for the night and return to camp after dawn. So these guys are badasses. They're like, fuck it. There are bears out here, so I'm just gonna hike it up and hold up tight for the night, and I'll go back at dawn. So these guys, they knew the woods. They've been doing this before, many times, and And Donald Shrum had come prepared, armed with a military-style utility belt that contained rations and a harness that would allow him to sleep safely in a tree without falling out. Not unlike Batman, really.
Mm-hmm.
So the men hunted, and eventually during the hunt, Donald found himself away from the group with nightfall fast approaching.
How big was the group?
Now, 3 guys. Okay. Just 3 guys. They're just on a hunting trip for the weekend. And sticking to the agreed-upon plan, Donald climbed up a tree overlooking a scenic bluff and nestled in for a long night. He had no idea just how long that night would be.
Dang.
Like, really, really long. And weird and cold.
God.
But mostly fucking weird. Just after dark, Donald noticed a spotlight moving through the sky. His first thought was that his friends had gotten worried about his disappearance and radioed a rescue helicopter to come find him. So Donald climbed down the tree and set 2 signal fires and started waving the aircraft towards him. And that's exactly what it did. It spotted the stranded hunter and started flying towards him. And he says in an interview that it looked at first like this light was just about, he couldn't tell how far off it was. It just looked like a helicopter spotlight coming at him, maybe an 8-inch wide spotlight shining in his direction. But as the aircraft approached, Donald became quickly unnerved at how silent it was. As it turned at an angle about 75 feet from his location, he could see that the aircraft was cylindrical shaped with rounded ends. He could see illuminated panels running perpendicular down the hall, 3 of them. He judged it to be around 150 feet long. He immediately thought, that thing is from outer space, and would later refer to it as the mothership.
Wow.
Fearing for his safety, Donald tossed his bow up into the tree and scrambled back up the trunk. He stared at the craft as it hung like a dark ghost in the night sky and watched in bewilderment as one of the panels opened and a second craft, one Donald would go on to call the scout ship, emerged. This craft descended into the canyon below before reappearing moments later over the bluff. Donald could see that it was much smaller than the mothership, and it was shaped sort of like a saucer. In Donald's words, he said, "When I saw that it had landed up on the ridge, I could see part of the top, but it had a little light on it. It looked like the top of a flying saucer, like I'd seen in pictures, like a dome. So, I kept my eyes on that."
Hell yeah.
Donald waited with bated breath for what came next. It wasn't long before he could hear brambles crunching below, the sound of crunching twigs and leaves getting closer. Something was moving towards him through the brush. Donald reached for his bow as 2 beings casually emerged from the bushes. Donald said, "I heard some thrashing through the brush, probably 5-10 minutes. These 2 humanoids come out of the brush and they kind of broke some of the brush off and was looking at it. And then they came straight under the tree, and I knew right then that I was fingered." The beings were about 4 to 5 feet tall and dressed in silver jumpsuits with puffy joints. Again, Donald said, "They looked 4 to 5 feet. Of course, I'm looking down at them, so they could be shorter, and they probably are. Shorter than they probably are. They had a silvery, like, one-piece suit on, and it seemed like it had the joints, puffy joints, with the shoulders and elbows. Their faces were hidden in shadow, but Donald could make out their dark eyes about 2 inches in diameter as the beings stopped beneath the tree and stared up at him. He said the dark circular eyes looked almost like welding goggles. It was immediately clear to the cornered hunter that the creatures were coming to get him. They climbed upon a boulder beneath the tree and started climbing the tree, reaching for Donald. Kicking and screaming, the poor man was able to back them off temporarily before the beings began the ascent again. This pattern of climbing and then kicking the beings away continued for some time until eventually the creatures changed tactics. Donald could see 2 glowing orbs moving through the woods towards him, accompanied by heavy footsteps. With growing dread, Donald looked on as some type of mechanical entity emerged from the brush, with flickering red eyes as if flames were embedded within a furnace within its face. The beings had called for backup. The robot, as he called it, waved its hand over the signal fires Donald had lit and extinguished their flames. It was just Donald, the three beings, and the dark now. The robot positioned himself under the tree and adjusted something on the side of its face. The mechanical man's jaw opened, and a gas or vapor started pouring out of its head and wafted up into the branches where Donald sat. And he got dizzy and passed out.
Strange.
Now, moments later, Donald found himself coming to, dizzy from the gas, and he reached for an arrow and shot at the robot, igniting sparks as the arrowhead made contact with its torso. He said he shot this thing from about 8 feet away, and it would have been like a rifle shot.
So he passed out and then he woke
Passed
back
out,
up.
woke up, so he wasn't gone.
Still there.
He wasn't out for too long.
In and out of consciousness.
Yeah, in and out, blacking out. The feeble attempt did seem to make the creature back a few feet away. Oh, sorry. I lost my place. Sorry. The robot stumbled back, and the humanoid creatures fled into the bushes. Feeling bolstered, Donald fired his 2 final arrows at the robot, but none of them penetrated the mental menace. As the standoff continued, the alien creatures came back out of the bushes, and Donald grabbed some matches from his belt. He lit his cap on fire and tossed it down to scare the creatures back. Now, they did seem to back up a few feet away, weary of fire, and Donald watched as the mothership suddenly flew off to a distance that made it seem just the size of a star in the sky. But the aliens, surely they must be aliens, proved to be stubborn. At times, the creatures seemed to communicate with one another through flashes of light, and Donald heard audible noises that could have been mistaken for the hooting of owls. Now, the standoff continued for 12 hours. The robot gassing Donald, Donald waking up to find the aliens climbing the tree, and then Donald desperately setting an item of clothing on fire and hurling it below.
Oh, God.
At one point, he even dumped change out of his pocket and threw it at his attackers. The humanoids seemed intrigued by the coins, examining them before holding on to the money for keeps. He even wrapped his compass in his shirt and lit that on fire, tossing it into the bushes in hopes of starting a forest fire to, quote-unquote, alert the cavalry. The things climaxed just before dawn as the beings called out a second robot, which greeted the original and seemed to beam some type of ray into its brethren. At that point, the original robot shot out a heavier, more powerful gas, which enveloped Donald, once again causing him to lose consciousness. Donald awoke just as the sun was rising, hanging from his harness, his head down, his feet down. The aliens were gone. He made his way back to camp, shivering in his t-shirt and jeans. When Vincent and Tim found him, they could tell that something had gone down to traumatize their friend. He slept for 6 hours in the tent and then woke to tell his buddies about everything that had just happened. Now, this is interesting. Vincent Alvarez was the first to comfort Donald, telling him that he believed him because he, too, had seen a strange light flying through the night sky that evening before. Then the men all agreed, however, that Donald should keep his mouth shut. They were worried if his story got out, he'd sound crazy and he might lose his job at Aerojet.
You think?
Yeah, big, like they're building missiles for the military.
Yeah.
And this is something he was freaked out about.
How was your weekend, Don?
Yeah, no shit.
Man, robots, tiny puffy jacket dudes.
Yeah, and as crazy as this story is, you'll see as we go on, he experienced some real post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, I bet.
From this. And he did tell his family. And his mother-in-law passed the story along to an astronomer she knew, thinking that he might be able to offer some insight into the strange encounter. The astronomer, however, reported the incident to officials at the nearby McClellan Air Force Base. It wasn't long after that Donald was visited by 2 G-men who took him in for questioning. So now we get the men in black coming in. Donald relayed his story and handed over his recovered arrowheads, which reportedly contained metal scraps from the hull of the robot on their tips. Donald would later find out that the men were not actually from McClellan, but Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The G-men would assure Donald that what he saw was nothing, at one point even suggesting that he had simply encountered a Boy Scout troop.
Right.
You know, in a giant flying tic-tac with robots. They also suggested, changing their story a number of times, that he had just encountered a band of renegade Japanese soldiers that had been hanging out in the Pacific Northwest since
Sure.
World War II.
Right.
So they had also a sort of racist explanation as well. And they told him to forget about the whole thing, but Donald Shroom couldn't soon forget. He started experiencing night terrors, his wife waking to him screaming the words, "Those eyes!" And not long after the encounter, he brought his family out to the location where he had been, where the whole thing had taken place, and noticed that the area had been recently excavated, and numerous cigarette butts that littered the freshly raked ground suggested to Donald that a government team had been out there collecting samples in the dirt and checking the area out. Fortunately, Donald was able to keep his job at Aerojet and didn't go public with the story for 40 years. The case was investigated by NICAP at the time and held in high regard by ufologist J. Allen Hynek as one of the best cases of the 1960s, alongside the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill and the Pascagoula, Mississippi encounter, two stories that we will do on this show eventually. However, Shroom's name wasn't revealed until the case was dug up by MUFON around 10 years ago and was recorded by Noe Torres and Ruben Uriarte in their book Aliens in the Forest. It remains one of the most bizarre and strange UFO cases to this day.
Yeah, that is strange, man.
And here, I'll show you. Here's a picture of the craft. We'll put this up on Instagram and Facebook. Here's a picture of the craft that he saw. You can see the three elongated panels that he called windows and this ship coming out. And here are the creatures emerging from the bushes. And then these are depictions of the aliens and the robot that were sort of drawn, I think, around the time, according to Donald's descriptions. So he told investigators about this, but he just didn't go public. And whenever referred to this case, his name was a pseudonym. He wanted no notoriety from this. And it was only later that his family, his grandkids, they, because this was a famous family story, they wanted it recorded in a book because they felt like it was important part of their familial history and something that happened to their grandfather and their father. So that's when he finally decided to tell this story to those two reporters in that book, Aliens in the Forest.
Wow.
So that's the story of Donald Shroom and the Cisco Grove alien encounter. When we come back, we're going to ask our guest, Andy, what the hell was that?
Andy, what was that?
And we're back, and it's time for What the hell was that? Andy, if you had to guess, what do you think's going on here?
Well, those renderings are interesting because they're not typical alien renderings.
No.
They more look like humans in a menacing suit.
Yeah.
Almost cartoonish.
Yeah.
Yeah. How would you describe?
Well, this one robot I'm looking at, I mean, it just looks like a 1960s
looks like a kids' toys robot.
Kids' toys, 1960s
From the
science
60s.
fiction robot.
Again, we have a case like the Flatwoods Monster, like the Verona's UFO landing that was behind the Iron Curtain in 1989, where we have these sort of 1950s B-movie aliens showing up.
No, these are not your Travis Walton Fire in the Sky aliens.
No,
Right.
And the first time, while I was researching this story, I was thinking, I think the first time we really encountered the alien grays that are kind of the typical ones that you're describing was in the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case, which was in the 60s. And I think that was, 68, 69? Was it a little earlier than that?
I want to say earlier.
62? I'd have to look it up. And then there were some illustrations of an entity that the magician Aleister Crowley was allegedly contacting, that he called Lamb, I think, Lam. And that entity looked more like an alien gray as well. But really, up through this, the Kelly Hopkins, the Hopkinsville Goblins, that we discussed back in episode 4 with Paul F. Tompkins, those were sort of 1950 monster movie creatures. So we have this idea that perhaps there's this period of time when these entities, whether they're from outer space or from another dimension, are sort of going through a trial period of how to present themselves
Oh, that's interesting.
in this new century.
Yeah.
And sort of borrowing the imagery from movies. And then the movies are sort of recycling that back into the public consciousness.
Now, is that the observer's psychic consciousness, or is that like you said, a planned play?
Because he even said in the story, he said, like I've seen in the pictures.
What's interesting, though, is it's also intermeshed with some modern alien UFO folklore. I mean, that tic-tac-shaped mothership with other ships coming out of it. That's stuff we see in very recent, camera phone video footage. This is where it gets strange for me, because it's like, this is what I'm talking about. Obviously, the observer, I just feel, has to play a part in this, or whatever's happening, because if you try and make sense of this, there's a guy in a tree. Now, aliens can pull you out of your bedroom through a tractor beam and up into their ship and out into space, right? But yet, here's two alien creatures. They bring in their robots, and they can't get a guy out of a tree?
Yeah, imagine if it was, forget the robot for a minute. Let's just say it's two men.
Yeah.
That come to get you and you're up in a tree.
Yeah.
It feels like that ordeal doesn't last 12 hours, right?
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
That's one of my biggest question marks on us. Then you add in the alien and the gas thing, and it's gas that only puts him out for a minute, and then he comes back.
Right, and so he's
weird.
in and out of consciousness, which means when he's out, they couldn't just, get him.
Well, so he had a couple theories about this. Now, I have to say that you can go and you can find these interview clips with Donald Trump, and he's speaking about it as an old man. And I have to say, listening to this guy tell this story, it feels very real to him, and it feels like he is telling the truth of his experience.
Yeah.
He is very calm. He's not at all a sensationalist. He doesn't sound like he's spinning a yarn. At times, he almost sounds embarrassed to be opening up about this stuff. At times, you can hear, and the reporter said,
those are the right markers,
the author
yeah.
said that he would well up with tears and get emotional, and you can hear him even kind of choking on his words a little bit. So it is very you listen to this guy who sounds like a salt of the earth kind of grandpa telling this story, and it's not like, kids, gather around, let me tell you the story about the time that grandpa found a couple of aliens, scared him up a tree.
Yeah.
He's kind of and his details are very specific. He has a very consistent account of how things played out. And one of the things that he, I think, thought was that the creatures had been there for another purpose, maybe just collecting samples from the forest, kind of ET style, and had not come equipped with any type of weaponry. And finding him was sort of a happy accident, but he was convinced that they wanted to collect him or get something from him as a sample, but maybe they had trouble getting to him because they were not prepared. They weren't prepared for this type of encounter, which is also weird. It's still weird if you have a ship that can cross a dimensional rift or cross an interstellar distance.
You think your scout patrol would have a laser gun,
right?
Yeah, but think about us in the technology we have. We're assuming these aliens are way more advanced than us. But let's just fast forward 100 years from now, and we go somewhere like Mars, right, in our little spacecraft, and we have our suit on that we have to get out into this environment. It might be kind of hard for us to take down.
That's a great point.
Somebody that,
if you found a local, if say you got to Mars and turned out there are beings there that are high up
in a tree,
and you don't have a ladder, you don't have something to get to, I don't know. And you're like, what about that thing that we used to gas? Maybe the gas will knock him out.
Well, and what's our two bots on Mars?
I think if he hadn't been strapped to the tree in that harness, he would have fallen out and they would have gotten him.
Yeah.
But it's a weird thing. He also said I guess in the years that followed, he would get a buzzing in his ear, and he would say that's when he knew that they were close by. I guess at one time, he and his family were all out camping. This is years later. It's like a decade.
He's still camping? He's still an outdoors guy?
I know, brave.
Well, he said that they were all hanging out in the woods camping, and suddenly he got this really heavy, buzzing, ringing sound in his ear that only he could hear, and he looked off to a mountain range, to the ridge, and moments later, a UFO came up over the ridge and hovered over his family, and they all saw it.
Oh my gosh.
And it took off. And they said, how did you know that that thing was coming? And he said, I knew, I got a signal that they were on their way.
Yeah.
And he was scared that they were coming to get him again.
Yeah, I would be too.
But it's just strange. I mean, what if all of this too is like some latent ability that we don't know that people have, where they can project almost these
It's almost
hallucinations or these things?
That's interesting.
Bring
The
them to
experience
life.
does seem real to him.
Yeah.
That seems to be the more plausible part of everything to me. The other part is like maybe it's just some asshole Boy Scouts that came into this too.
some Japanese Boy Scouts.
So the experience was real, but these guys are just real a-holes.
But it is such it's a fascinating story, and we have at least one corroborating witness that saw lights in the sky. Now, maybe he just said that to back up his buddy, but this guy wasn't looking for publicity. It was years. It was kind of like Albert Ostman when he was kidnapped by Bigfoot, supposedly. He didn't tell his story for 30 or 40 years later.
And the fact that you said J. Allen Hynek, I mean, he was the father of Project Blue Book. The Air Force's government-funded program into investigating UFOs thought this was one of their more stellar cases.
Oh, wow.
Says a lot to me about this case. And then you follow it up with a visit from a couple, as you called them, G-men, who are asking to investigate and hear his account. This is all very common in these strange
It's
I love
cases.
the cigarette detail
I
that
know.
like the government would go like do all this work, but they leave their cigarettes.
Government men.
That seems appropriately 1960s. Like, that's something out of the Mad Men. It's like
Totally.
It's like in Mad Men when they're picnicking and they clean their blanket by just tossing all their trash.
Right. Oh my
It's so,
gosh.
I mean, it's like that kind of makes sense, you know.
Man, who knows? That
it's
is
so bizarre. But it's this is like such a great example of high strangeness. Like it doesn't quite make sense, but it's so real to the person who encountered it.
well, and that's why I just can't get behind, like, that the I guess what you would call it, the extraterrestrial hypothesis that, here's some alien civilization from Zeta Reticuli coming down and, sending out a scout patrol into the forest, and then beep, boop, bop, puffy jacket, get down the tree, and then shoot gas out my mouth, and let's call in the other robot. Whatever, I don't discount for 1 second that something incredible happened there. And maybe whatever these things is, this vast amount of energy in this small amount of space give off such a radiation that it interplays with the observer's mind. And this is how
then the image that they're present, maybe they are sort of formless beings.
Yeah.
Or maybe they look one way, but the way we see them, either because of the dimension they come from or whatever's happening, there's some residual thing, it's left for the observer to interpret that image and project its appearance on it.
Well, sure.
You know what I mean?
But the difference between the robot and the guys in the drawing set, isn't that difference? Isn't there a possibility that, like, Joe and Rob go out and they're having a hard time? They call him back to the ship and they're like, I don't know, Larry, put on the big suit and go out there. You know what I mean? And it's maybe just a third person or a third thing.
He just called it the robot because he said he was bigger or it was more mechanical.
But to me, it's like almost they called for backup and it's like, well, you better put on that other suit.
Well, it sounds like whatever these things are in suits. I mean, almost the way he describes the silver jumpsuits with the puffy stuff and the goggles, that sounds like a hazmat suit to me. So it could be that these beings are in some type of weird jumpsuit.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be the only case where the supposed alien are in some strange suit.
Yeah, I mean, in the joints, we have puffy joints on astronaut suit, on NASA suits. You can see those like puffy, almost Michelin Man joints.
It's almost like whatever this is, whatever intelligence this is, can take on kind of whatever role they want. They can change their features. They can change the event.
That's why I always go back to when we did the Zamfretta abductions, and there were these beings that abducted this Italian security guards allegedly, but they almost seemed like really bad at playing the role of alien. Like their stuff was just like somewhere it was lost in translation. It was like, this does not make sense, the stuff that they're doing. And so I wonder if sometimes these entities, when they cross over or come here to interact with us, the mask they're wearing or the role that they're playing that's hiding what they really are. sometimes is like a bad idea. They're trying to be like, this is what we think humans think aliens are, so we're gonna act like that.
Yeah, or more specific, this is what we can use from this person's mind to interplay this frequency. This is how we'll show up, you know?
Right.
Because if you think about it, it's like, you know, your mind is really only like the words you know and the books you've read, and you know what I mean. So if this guy's brain frequency is almost, it's like it's picking up on something, you know, they have to use what's already in there in order to interplay with him. You know what I mean? And who knows the motive behind that interplay. I mean, obviously, like, you know, like you said, he saw another UFO decades later. So this isn't a one-off incident, you know?
No.
And he has some sort of like
and I don't think
radar about them being out there.
And
you know?
as far as I know, he didn't ever undergo hypnotherapy or anything.
Probably a good thing.
So who knows? This guy could have had experiences like Whitley Strieber did his whole life and not really known about it, you know? And this is the one that he was sort of consciously aware of. I don't know. So do you think it's a hallucination?
No, I'm not saying hallucination. No. It seems like a real event. It's interesting. I don't know if I buy into the like that the aliens are that they would have the ability to like take on this other guys, but then couldn't like get this thing out of a tree, like that they would have. I have a hard time reckoning with.
Well, I like how what you said. I mean, you know, when you pointed out like, hey, we have rovers on Mars, you know, let's say one of the spirit rovers finds some tree on Mars and there's a creature up it. He would have a hard time getting that creature down.
Yeah.
Yet alone, that's alien technology. That's our alien technology on another planet.
Maybe all of those things were robots.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there was no biological entity and there's
they
maybe
just
there
drop
was something that the ship is being controlled by a distant intelligence that's like trying to command, okay, try to get him, you know, they're remote controlling them from a great distance and they're like, I can't get this guy out of this tree, fuck it, let's just go home. Let's just get those plant samples and head back. You know
Strange.
What? We'll never know. It's time to wrap up the show once again. I want to thank our guest, Andy Rosen,
thanks for having me.
Yeah,
buddy,
dude, what a pleasure.
Where can people find your work? Where can people listen to your music? What
my
do?
website is produced by ANDYROSEN.com. That's probably the easiest.
Cool.
And I'm on Instagram as Dr. Rosen.
Great.
Those are
Awesome,
two
man.
great spots to
I
find
love
me.
it. That's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And of course, Totally Lame every Monday.
That's a great.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's every Monday.
subscribe to it,
Okay,
so I get it
great.
every Monday
I don't know
morning.
when it's dropping.
I listen to it when I walk my doggies.
Oh, that's amazing.
Do you draw? Are you guys still on Earwolf Network?
No,
So
not anymore.
Are you networkless?
Networkless.
It's just like us.
We're indie.
Nah,
Totally.
Too.
Keeping it
Do you drop all of it on your own? Do you do all that stuff?
I don't do any of this stuff anymore.
Cool.
I used to back in the day.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. It's all me texting Riley at 11 p.m. being like, hey, friendly reminder, where's the podcast? I'm going to go to bed soon.
I'm just drinking coffee.
Yeah, I'm like, sorry, buddy. Can we go back and add that thing in that we were going to do? Well, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was a blast.
Riley, where can people find you?
What shall I plug this week?
Whatever you want.
Spindrift's doing some shows this summer,
Great.
so check that out if you're into psychedelic Western music. That's all.
Cool. Bryce?
Hey, you know, we really appreciate all of our new listeners checking us out. And if you could only just take the second to find us on iTunes, rate and review us, it'd be
we'd really appreciate it.
tremendous help to the show.
Tell us why that's so important.
It changes the game.
Yeah.
You get those iTunes reviews come in, it makes you feel real good, makes you sleep better at night.
Yeah.
But it makes that iTunes algorithm kick in.
I
like
want to
that.
say this is our 25th episode. I should have mentioned this.
Awesome.
And we started, I mentioned this last week with Elizabeth, but then I went and did the math. This is our 6-month mark right here. This
Oh, wow, that's incredible.
Congrats,
So,
guys.
a huge thanks to our audience.
Nice.
And guys, we are really doing this all ourselves. This is just word of mouth. We appreciate it. And we would appreciate it if you could just spread the word of the show. If you like the show, tell one friend, tell a couple friends. Please post about it on your Facebook pages. We're just really trying to get more people into the show. We want to keep doing this. And, it's great that we've been able to grow the audience as much as we have already. But also, we count on you guys so much. Thank thank you. And you can find me on all the stuffs at McMills. Follow us, Bigfoot Collectors Club, everywhere you can. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody. We'll be around for at least another 6 months.
No diggity.
No doubt.
Until we prove that aliens do exist.
Oh, we will.
And we're done. Yeah.
Mic drop.
See you next week.
Thank you.